For members of the public who may be joining us on Zoom, when I open the meeting to public comment, in order to be recognized, please use the raise your hand option or raise hand option in Zoom, or use *9 by phone. If you are recognized, please state your name and address, including recorded viewing on the town's website. So I, Andrea Solomon, hereby call this meeting to order. All commission votes will be taken via roll call. Oh, we don't have to do that, right? Because we're all here. Okay, so we will start with, do we have to start with an attendance roll call? No, okay, we're all here. All right. Okay, so first up, we'll review the approval of minutes. Did everyone have a chance to read those?
He always has.
Okay.
No, it was my fault. Wasn't here. It's typos and stuff. I'm not good at that. I read the movie. You need a motion.
Okay, so yeah, if I can have a motion to accept those.
I, David DeLong, hereby move to accept the June 14th, 2023 minutes of the Public Works Commission.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so next up, review of calendar, future proposed meeting dates.
Very good. As you can see, as a reminder, we put down sort of tentative agenda items. Generally, a lot of the business we do is kind of cyclical in the course of a year. I will mention I did leave off something by accident. On October 11th is our next scheduled meeting. Again, we meet the second Wednesday of every month, 4 to 6 p.m. At this location. But in October, I failed to include a review of the general fund capital plan. That was mistakenly omitted. We are still awaiting detailed guidance from the finance committee and town manager's office, but we do expect that to be coming, fairly shortly. So, and we also have on our radar kind of roads program, public meeting, and we also are going to circle back on some design and construction standards for the public works, water, sewer, as well as engineering.
That's all on the meeting on October 11th.
Yes,
October
correct.
11th.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yes.
Okay.
It's just a heads up for November. I most likely will not be able to make that. I have an international flight coming back that afternoon.
Oh, okay. Unlikely.
I assume doesn't arrive on time.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, so moving on, we have D1 Concord Climate Action Committee Initiative. So we have a presentation from Erickson, and we will probably be voting on whether or not to have a letter of acceptance, provide that.
Excellent. Eric, could you come on up to the table right over here, generally where we have our guest speakers? But Eric is the Director of Sustainability for the town of Concord. Eric, what have you been here about 2 years or so?
Oh, since December, not even a year yet.
Not a year. All right. Well, it's been getting up.
Lower expectations.
All right, fair enough. So a year under his belt. Eric and I had the pleasure of going down to a conference in Cape Cod, which was kind of fun in Falmouth, where we talked about big picture sustainability, challenges for communities and that sort of thing. But Eric is sort of getting himself up to speed on a lot of the climate related issues. We've had lots of conversations about activities that Public Works has been involved with. But Eric, maybe you can kind of give our team, again, this is Public Works Commission, who I report to, and if you could sort of give us an overview of why you're here and
Sure.
what the ask is.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me, giving me some time on your agenda. I'm sure it's a full one, so I'll keep my comments brief. In a nutshell, I'm here representing the Climate Action Committee, who I work closely with as the town liaison. And one of the current priorities of the committee is to work towards having the town engage in conducting a climate vulnerability assessment. I think the document was shared with you. I'm not sure if you all had a chance to really look through it. But the committee put a document together that kind of outlines a justification, the need for the town to conduct an assessment. And as you might imagine, even if you didn't have a chance to look at it, climate vulnerability assessment really explores how the town is vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And across a variety of different sectors. And so it differs a little bit from some other plans, such as the hazard mitigation plan, which also identifies risks. But traditionally, the hazard mitigation plan uses historical data, looks at past data to try to plan for that. Whereas the climate vulnerability assessment uses models to look forward, to look at the projected impacts. Typically, that's done by taking regional climate models and downscaling those as much as possible to have the most accurate sense for our region right here. And using the information from the assessment to best assess what the future threats and conditions and impacts will be here in town and how we can best respond to those strategically. So sectors that would be involved in a assessment could include the built environment, so buildings, transportation, infrastructure, the natural environment, agriculture, et cetera. So there's a lot of different areas that you can look at as part of that. Obviously, there's strong connections between climate change, the impacts of climate change, and public works. If you did have a chance to look at the document, you could see there were a few things that were included in there that were taken from our climate action and resilience plan, specifically related to public works, which is we're looking at a integrated water resources plan, which is already in the works. Threat assessment for critical infrastructure, and creation of a stormwater utility, as well as the development of more green infrastructure. So I'm sure those are all things that are on your radar as well. At this point, what the committee is doing is reaching out to try to engage other boards, commissions, committees who are relevant to this effort, and try to raise some awareness about it and hopefully get some collective support around it. I mean, we feel pretty confident that the select board and others will be supportive of the Climate Action Committee pursuing this, but given that it's a topic that reaches very broadly, touches on a lot of different areas, we're just hoping to get a little bit more of a higher level endorsement in principle for moving forward with this. It would be great to have that from a number of the committees and commissions such as yours, just to say that there's this very strong voice across the town that echoes that this is something that the town should be investing in. It is a big endeavor. It's not a cheap endeavor to do a full climate vulnerability assessment. So we'll be looking for grant opportunities to support it. We'll probably also be looking to the town to hopefully contribute to it over time. And because it is a big endeavor, it'll probably also be broken into pieces. So for example, one of the things that they're considering trying to move forward with first is maybe a very detailed hydrologic study of the town. So obviously water is a big issue for the town, a big potential threat for the town, flooding. As we've seen lately, traditionally flooding is looked at as rain over a period of time, rivers rise, go out in the floodplains, create flooding. But as we know from last Friday and other previous events and what's happened in Leominster, we're having this much more intense concentrated events of precipitation. So flooding is coming more and more in the form of these very acute events coming directly down with just the volume of water and nowhere to go. Other potential sectors to focus on are doing a forest study for the town. So looking at forest cover, how climate change is potentially going to impact forest cover for the town. Or as I mentioned before, agricultural study. There's certainly an agricultural component to Concord, and how would we anticipate that being affected? And those are just a couple examples. But again, at this point, the committee is really just hoping to garner some high-level support from other representative committees and commissions and boards in the town. And so that's really it in a nutshell. So we hope it's something you would consider thinking about. And ultimately, we'd like to hopefully have a number of different letters or statements of support that we can use to move forward with the project. So I'm happy to entertain any questions if there are any.
It seems in line with Concord's thinking, I think, right in line with it. Did you have a comment or question?
I just want to understand. The CAC is it a town committee then, or is it a town, it's part of town government, or are we under the heading? It isn't a private group of folks who
No,
are
it's a committee. It's a town committee.
town committee?
Yes, yeah. So
That's-
there's formerly there was a climate action advisory board and a comprehensive sustainability and energy committee. There were two separate committees that existed for a number of years. One more focused on policy, one more focused on engagement. And it was decided that those two committees should be combined. So just this past year, those were combined into the climate action committee.
Okay. And do you have a map of the sort of, you said it's broken into pieces, the things that you would work on or potentially that would be part of? Is there some kind of map of you ticked off hydrologic study, forest cover, agriculture study? Are there others? Is there a universe of these, or that you're still very much in flux and we're just thinking about what the possibilities?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a number of different angles to approach it from. I think at the moment, I think the committee is leaning more towards a hydrologic study, knowing that has a lot of significance to a lot of different areas.
Mhm.
And there's also been from a number of fronts interest in doing a forestry study. It's something that the town had done a while ago, probably needs to be updated, is very relevant as well. I would say that at the moment, those are probably two of the front runners. But I think the committee at the moment, there's a working group within the committee who is continuing to sort of shape maybe what that model would look like with moving forward, what those pieces would be, and in what order and priority we might want to tackle them.
Okay.
Couple questions.
Sure.
100% support of this. In my day job, we get involved with this type of work too. And because of that, we look for grant programs to support communities. I know Concord's great at looking at grant programs. I was just looking at one the other week, the Community Compact. I don't know if you've seen that menu of things that they'll fund. But climate is in there as one of them. And I don't know if they have an agricultural category, but I'm not sure what that will study. But
Yeah, I did happen to see that. If I'm not mistaken, I think a town can only submit one of those.
okay.
And I
Yeah, probably
believe,
one per year, yeah.
yeah, and I believe that there was an effort going in on behalf of our economic vitality manager who
Okay.
had an idea that she was interested in submitting. But yeah, I did see that. So yeah, and we're actively looking for opportunities. My understanding from talking to some people is that there's not necessarily a huge amount of funding available to do this type of work comprehensively. So like I said, I think we'll probably be breaking into pieces, and hopefully that might help us give a little bit more flexibility and opportunity for those pieces to look in some different directions. But we'll actively be pursuing that. And I think we're also hopeful that the town at large, recognizes the importance of this and how far reaching it is, and will, potentially include some money in the budget moving forward, in some capacity to help support this.
Is part of the committee's role to advocate for things from the state government? Because I know the Healy administration is really supportive of these things, and I don't know if that's part of their role to work with our elected officials to get more money available to do studies like this.
Yeah.
Make more money available.
Yeah, I think it is. Concord's in our climate action plan, our goals closely reflect those of the state in terms of greenhouse gas reduction targets. So I think we're very much in parallel with that. And we are in communication with the legislative offices regularly in terms of looking at funding opportunities and soliciting their support and helping to pursue those. So
I know a few communities have done this. I don't know if you probably collected examples from.
well, we're working on that now, but we're always happy to hear.
But
Here's
some
suggestions.
of them realize that the value of this.
Yeah.
And I think more and more communities need to do it, because like you said, this is forward thinking versus let's look at the past and just, address what's happened or what we think is going to happen based on past events.
Mhm.
When we have all kinds of modeling that looks into the future, and as you described it, it's how we package it. And every
Absolutely.
community is different.
Yeah. I mean, it's also interesting, just beyond some of the more obvious impacts and value of something like this is, it's my understanding that municipalities, it's more common for rating agencies to be asking municipalities what they're doing with regard to this in terms of responding to climate impacts and planning for those. And that, you know, that can potentially have an impact on ratings
Yeah. good
for
point.
town. So, I mean, I know Concord has a pretty stellar rating overall, but it can't hurt to be able to answer that when they ask that question and say, you know, we're doing all this. So.
So if you would not put it in different pieces, what is the total kind of dollar amount?
So far, my research has indicated on the order of several $100,000 to do a pretty comprehensive.
So above 500 or below?
I would say so, probably in that range. I think 400 to 500. Yeah. So it's a fairly large one-time ask, which is why I think it's probably going to be more realistic to try to tackle it in pieces.
Time frame. I mean, time period, not necessarily when you want to start, but how long is it going to take?
I would estimate a few years. I mean, again, I think it depends on if
How far you're
how
going?
quickly we're tackling it and how many pieces we could potentially manage at once.
So is a lot of it outside consultants in addition to towns,
Yeah.
staff, meaning you?
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine that a good bit of it would involve outside consultants. My understanding is that there's already been work done from some groups at MIT and others about actually downscaling some of the regional climate models. So I think we may be able to get away with getting some of that baseline information in terms of the expected impacts, you know, from models without really incurring much cost. But then it'll be the different elements of it will probably involve having consultants come in and help us out to do those detailed studies.
So one thought that I have is that in the recommendation to the board, to the select board, it's fairly short and it really didn't, answer any of the questions that we've asked already. So I think, you might want to put a little bit more into that.
Okay.
To give them at least a little bit more sense of being able to, what kind of specific questions they're going to ask you, you being the group, not necessarily just you, the person.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I'll take that back to the committee.
And I guess on the suggested letter that from us, in the second paragraph, second sentence, it says conducting a vulnerability assessment and projections of the future climate aligns with the old adage that we can't manage what we don't measure. Now, the difficulty I have with us saying that or whatever, I'm not sure what it really means because we're trying to measure the future, not necessarily measure the past. And so we're making projections on that. So I was just a little concerned about what we're saying and whether we're saying anything appropriate or not.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously that was just a suggested format and suggested language that, if it helped to save people time, but
The comment that Jeff made that we're probably 100% in support of it is appropriate. That we understand that it needs to be done. Something needs to be done to understand what impacts could happen to us so that we can be more prepared for them. And, that's from a public works kind of thinking, that's what we're going to try and come at you.
yeah, sure. Yeah. And obviously if you do decide to offer something in support, then it could certainly be.
Is this something you're
something
trying to get to the select board fairly quickly?
It's not, I mean, we'd like to get it soon. It's not, there's no immediate sense of
Have
urgency.
you met with other committees?
Yeah, I've been meeting with some of the other committees, boards, commissions, over the last couple of weeks. And, I think once we feel like, we've had a chance to do that, get some feedback, hopefully get a positive response, then we'll sort of reassess exactly how we might want to,
Okay.
share with the board.
I would be comfortable to authorize the chair to issue a letter in say, in whatever theme or
Spirit, in the
as
spirit.
presented,
yeah.
and then optimize the wording around that paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could work on that and then maybe just have you look at it.
Yeah.
And then if everyone, I mean, because if we're all in agreement with the general spirit of support,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
making sure it fits into what we normally would pay attention to or advocate for.
Before we vote on it, though, can I ask
Of course.
one other question? I would like input from our fearless leader
Sure.
here. If you have any thoughts as you look at this about or concerns, or what's on your mind in terms of as the head of the department, what's coming up for you in terms of concerns around this whole project and what the implications would be for DPW, CPW?
Yeah, and we, interestingly enough, almost everything we do touches upon one of these,
Yeah.
these, interests. So we're very supportive of the concept. Part of the challenge of any study and planning is, how much can we actually harness and leverage? But I think you'll hear a little bit as we talk about stormwater coming up, how important that is to us. Drinking water, we've talked a little bit about our master planning, which is really, we're talking 50 years from now, not next year. That's how we think. On the wastewater, it's been an issue and challenge no matter what we do. And, with the intensities of storms, all these things are important. So there's nothing I've heard or seen that isn't something that we've already started to think about. I think this just allows it to be harnessed in one more kind of holistic way for the town. So Public Works and Public Works Commission will be plugged in on every front, that I can imagine. So if this gets oxygen, then I'm sure you'll be hearing more about it. This is really just to kind of launch the interest townwide. So it's sort of a natural partnership for us.
Yeah, I think it's as you alluded to, I think in some ways it's sort of formalizing what a lot of what's already happening in town across a lot of different departments and divisions. I mean, I think everybody has climate on their mind in some ways, and in Public Works probably more than others. I think trying to move forward with a more formal assessment, I think would just help to formalize that and help draw those groups together.
Okay.
Does someone want to make a move to send this letter of support after we rework that paragraph a little? Or something?
Sure, I move that we authorize the chairman to put together a letter of support to the select board and this regarding this matter.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous votes, okay? Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Eric.
Eric.
Thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your good work.
Thank
Thank
you. So we're on to D2, MBTA communication line, request for private utility in a public way.
Okay, we got Steve Dukran, town engineer, is going to present this for us. Steve, you want to provide
Yes.
the commission with a little brief overview?
Yes, thank you, and welcome back after a long summer break.
Yeah.
This is an easy one, and we have a representative from the MBTA. It's actually contracted, but a seller who's on Zoom. So if you have any detailed questions from him, you can please do, but I'll set up what's been requested. What's been asked for is the installation of a private utility within the public right of way. And so it so happens that the town owns a right of way where the railroad crosses Belknap Street and Baker Ave. It's not typical. Usually find that the right of way there is owned by the railroad. In this case, it's not. So private utility, it is because the MBTA wants to run these communication lines within our right of way. So for their own use, and that's why it's private, as opposed to a public utility, which is, provision of water, electric, that kind of thing for general public use. If it was a public utility in our right of way, it will go to the select board, which does the grant of location approval. That's as opposed to what being asked for. So there's precedent here. There's a policy that was instituted in 1998 by this commission to handle these matters. And we've had a few instances over the years where you have approved the installation of irrigation line or sewer service that connects one property from one side, owned by the same owner on the other side. So a couple of years ago, we did it for the DCR down at the Walden Pond preservation. So this is a similar one. All right, so that's essentially what we are faced with here. We don't have any problems. Engineering doesn't have any problems with these installations. So if you approve, we recommend that you include all the conditions that we listed at the bottom of the letter. They're pretty standard. They're similar to the grant of location conditions that we do when we go before the select board. And they will be included in our right-of-way permit, which is issued by the engineering division.
So Steve, the other three crossings are not public road, or the railroad owns that right of way.
We'll have to double check, but I'm
So,
pretty sure Commonwealth.
Sudbury Road, Commonwealth and Conant.
Right, I'm not sure for all three, but at least the two that being considered today, the railroad offered it. Normally they tell you, we own it, we can do whatever we want. Yeah.
Okay, so the only other question I've got is that on your order, your conditions, the first one mentions requesting entity, but all the rest of them mention owner. So
It'll be the same, yeah.
I know it's meant to be the same. I mean,
Yeah.
so should we have the first one be the owner MBTA instead of requesting entity? If we're gonna have those as conditions?
Yeah, we just make sure, when we say owner, because it could be a right-of-way owner we're referring to.
Or maybe it's not a big deal. It's just that's just what I noticed.
All right. Yes, I just scanned through it and you're correct. The owner there is the same as the requesting entity. So if we want to be consistent, we can change those.
Just to own, okay.
Right.
So people understand
Yeah.
Yeah.
reason
Yeah.
for my question?
I have one question, which is more kind of when it's done. I see on Baker Avenue, there is use of a flagger. On Belknap, I look at the detour, and as I live on Belknap, I know how this goes. That corner where the detour goes, Sudbury and Grant, given the two entries to Crosby, this is a very difficult area to get out of Grant Road. So I would recommend to the MBTA to have a flagger at that point to avoid any kind of major issues. That's my only concern on the detour there.
All right, we will make a note of that. We will require them to prepare and present a
Yeah.
traffic management plan and.
Because you have right now, you have Sudbury and all the traffic coming from the traffic light, or when the train is gone, you have people going in and out of Crosby's, and you have Grand Road, and there's no traffic light and nothing. It's dangerous already now.
Really good point.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Does this seem amenable? Anyone want to make a motion to
Sure.
approve this?
I move that we approve the MBTA's request to install 3 1.5-inch communication conduits within the public right of way at 2 of their at-grade rail crossings located at Baker Avenue and Belknap Street, as described in a letter request submitted on their behalf by the McCourt Construction Company dated September 6, 2023, and an accompanying memorandum prepared by the Engineering Division to the Public Works Commission dated September 6, 2023, with the addition on the first order of conditions that after the word requesting entity, we include the words and owner, and that there be appropriate, what was the right word, Sven? Or,
They call it flagger
Korea,
on Grant and Sudbury.
Yes.
Okay.
A traffic flagger.
Yeah, traffic.
traffic flagger.
Yeah.
So both locations.
And Dave's.
Sorry, guys.
That's okay. No, it's very precise. Good. All right, all in favor?
I,
Aye, unanimous vote. Okay. All right, thank
Steve.
you. Steve. So now we're on to D3 Stormwater Management Update presented by Solomon Ybarra.
Steve, you might want to stay up.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
well,
give him some more room.
make room for
Yeah.
Saul Ibarra. Saul is our kind of most, recent addition on the engineering group. Saul has a lot of stormwater experience, so, we were hiring, it was really important, sort of the focus we have on stormwater needs and management, Saul was a natural, so. With that said, Saul is going to give you a little bit of an overview of our stormwater system. Some of the needs, there is no actionable item here. This is more for information, but it's important that, as we move forward in stormwater, there will be a lot of public outreach, and we figured this would be a good place to start. So
thanks.
so with that said, I'm going to see if I can't share the screen and bring up your presentation. Let's see how this goes. All right. Are we good? Yep. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Solomon Ibarra. I'm the town of Concord environmental stormwater engineer. Steve and I are here today to present an update on our stormwater management program. Next slide. The topics we'll be discussing today are an update to the MS4 permit, as well as our stormwater utility implementation plan, and select drainage and infrastructure issues, and then followed by a Q&A session. Next slide, please. It's a brief overview of our drainage system. Concord falls within 5 major watersheds, serviced by 171 culverts and 9 bridges that span bodies of water. The MS4 permit oversees 154 outlets, nearly 4,000 catch basins, 1,600 drainage manholes, and other storm drainage infrastructure. Next slide, please. Just for some background on the MS4 permit. In 2003, the MS4 was implemented. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, which hence the S4.
Okay.
Yeah, it's confusing to a lot of people, but it introduced 6 essential minimum control measures. These measures control or mitigate pollutant loading to our surface waters. And these measures include public education and public involvement, an illicit discharge detection and elimination program, construction stormwater runoff controls, post-construction stormwater management, and town facilities pollution prevention and good housekeeping guidelines. In 2016, there was an upgrade to the MS4 permit. It was effectuated in 2018, and an increased demand on CPW staff to manage the permit, and elevated drainage system operations and maintenance obligations, and it heightened the need for capital projects aimed at improving stormwater quality. And most importantly, it imposed specific requirements for phosphorus reduction in the Aspet River. As probably many of you know, the importance of the MS4 permit is it ensures responsible stormwater management. It safeguards our surface water, water quality, and it helps to mitigate the environmental impact due to urban runoff. The year 5 of the permit, this past year, 2023,
we were able to meet the requirements of the MS4. That included public outreach and public participation, updates to the IDDE program. We conducted erosion and sediment control site plan reviews and inspections. The heavy lifting this year was in post-construction stormwater management, MCM number 5. We'll discuss that more on the next slide, but it involved an inventory of BMP retrofitted town parcels in the Aspet River, and also included an evaluation of all town-owned properties for BMP retrofit opportunities. And Highway and Grounds for Good Housekeeping, MCM number 6, inspected 572 catch basins and removed 404 cubic yards of sediment from those catch basins. They were also able to remove 310 cubic yards of material from our roadways, 360 miles to be specific. Right, please.
You can just define BMP in case people, just remind people.
Yes, BMP is basically a stormwater green infrastructure. A lot of times it entails infiltrating runoff flows, and that helps to reduce pollutant loading to the surface waters. Again, so this is the requirements that were met for MCM number 5, the post-construction stormwater management. In this image, we had to analyze the amount of phosphorus entering the Aspet River. In the image, we're seeing a heat map of outfall catchments. And it shows the amount of phosphorus being produced by these catchments in a pound per acre per year unit of measure. All of these catchments altogether total about 200 pounds of phosphorus produced per year. The Aspet River is designated as impaired by phosphorus, but it does not have a TMDL, which is a total maximum daily limit, but it does have a TMDL for wastewater. We are expecting an update to the MS4 in 2024. And it is possible that we will have a future limit for stormwater for phosphorus. If that does happen, it'll increase costs for to implement the MS4 permit. Additional requirements met. We were able to analyze the 5 sites within the Aspet River watershed that contain existing green infrastructure. The calculations show that we are removing 1.5 pounds phosphorus per year from those 5 sites. Additionally, we have conducted analysis of 10 properties owned by the town for retrofit opportunities to install those green infrastructure stormwater BMPs. It's estimated to cost $1 million. And the reason the MS4 is seeking to remove phosphorus from the Aspet River watershed is to reduce eutrophication, which leads to algae blooms and could increase dissolved oxygen to improve aquatic life. Next slide. Moving on to our stormwater utility. First off, what is a stormwater utility and what is its purpose? Stormwater utility is much like any other public utility. It provides a service for a fee. A dedicated stormwater utility can ensure compliance with state and federal environmental regulations, and it would oversee, maintain, and improve our stormwater infrastructure. This map shows stormwater's utilities that have been adopted across New England since prior to 2022. There are 20 currently in Massachusetts and counting. Since 2022, Wellesley, Massachusetts has adopted a stormwater utility, and Lexington is planning to vote on the stormwater utility at their next town meeting. some select drainage and infrastructure problems that we have across town, that a stormwater utility could help repair or maintain these infrastructure issues and drainage issues. The issues that we've been seeing across town primarily are dealing with drainage system capacity issues, aging of infrastructure, maintenance of infrastructure, and lack of infrastructure. In the areas where we lack infrastructure, we have a lot of roadway erosion issues. These photos here are of Elsnore Street during one of our recent heavy rain events this past summer. And as you can see, it was ponded over so much that there were recycle bins floating down the street. So
If you were trying to recycle the water. no?
yeah. Slide, please. These are images of Potter Street, where the ponding issues here are drainage capacity issue. The flows here are serviced by leaching catch basins. They can only infiltrate so much water. And the leaching catch basins are sufficient for the amount of flow that's being generated from the house, the abutting houses and the road. Some of the solutions we could have here are larger infiltrative structures or a connection to the enclosed drainage system. Images at Thoreau and Concord Carlisle High School. The flooding here was exacerbated by some construction that was occurring at the high school, but primarily across the street from that stop sign, there's an outfall that's covered by water. So the outfall is lower than the water surface elevation. So it doesn't allow the flows within the system to evacuate the system. Yeah. Slide, please. Here we can see additional infrastructure issues. In the top right photo, what we're looking at is tree root intrusion into the pipe network on Pilgrim. And this caused flooding on the street above and properties on Pilgrim. And the photo below, we're looking at a broken pipe on Minot Road. We don't have funds to repair this pipe, not properly anyway. In this fiscal year, our budget for stormwater management is $50,000. So would be 10% right there probably to fix that. As the members of this commission have been updated on our bridge and culvert infrastructure assessment. In that assessment, 81 culverts were recommended for some form of treatment, which range from routine maintenance to rehabilitation to full replacement. 30 stream areas were recommended for channel improvements. Those improvements range from simple bank protection with riprap to full dredging for stream restoration. 56 head walls and or wing walls need rehabilitation and reconstruction. 20 culverts were recommended for full replacement at a cost of $10.5 million. All the treatment together was $12.25 million. Again, for fiscal year 24, we received $50,000.
Wow.
Keep repeating that.
How much did we ask for? Well,
About $500,000.
Yeah. And the CFO that put the plan together said, we'll give you a little seed money, conduct a study, and this will definitely go through the stormwater utility, and that'll be your revenue source.
so this time around, we are asking for how much?
We're developing that, you know, so it's probably close to the same number. What we're really doing is the assessment right now. Our focus is to find out existing conditions and needs, then start backing up the asks. And I think that's sort of the whole idea of utility is we need to justify what are the, what's the order of magnitude? We've already identified that last year. We'll repeat that this year. But with $50,000, we didn't have a lot to move from our assessments last year, other than we're now have a consultant on board to provide support for defining and framing what a utility might look like. We didn't have that this time last year, so we do. But this is going to be a process, as Saul has mentioned. It's a need that's been identified across the country through the whole MS4 program. The MS4 is a EPA federal program. And just like our wastewater, it's similar. It's only stormwater with volume issues and quality issues. And really, I think it's drawing attention to the fact that we have infrastructure that has never really been contemplated for regulatory compliance before. It's for functionality only. In the last 10, 20 years, we're now looking at regulatory issues, which is quality, but it's sort of a nexus of, climate and quality mean we just need to put more attention to this. So we're really, it's a long answer, but we're positioning ourselves to have, a program in place and try and join those forces of the minority of utilities out there. Is Saul had mentioned, if you go back to this, image
Yeah.
here.
So what are these, excuse me, what are these other cities doing? Or if there is no, I don't understand the disconnect between a stormwater utility and what exists today
What exists today is primarily funding through the general fund.
of the town,
Of the town.
local municipality.
Right, and I think the concern with that going that route is that there's no equity in that system. So your major runoff contributors are paying the same amount as, whatever your property tax would be. So
Okay,
in the utility, that distribution would be more geared towards those with high runoff contributions.
okay.
How do you figure that out?
Yeah.
One of your slides says that the properties that have the runoff or pay.
Mhm.
Explain that to me. I don't understand that.
Sure. So part of this process will be to analyze impervious area properties. And the rate usually for most of these communities that have already adopted a stormwater utility, it's a tiered structure. So what they do is they find an equivalent, what's called an equivalent residential unit. So your average household size of that has a certain amount of square footage of impervious area. That average size gets, one rate, and then from there it increases. So if you double that square footage, you might be in another rate, and it continues on up until you reach, some level for a single family residency. And then you'll have a different structure for commercial businesses. So if you have 1 million square feet of impervious cover, that fee may be, $100,000. So it could be quite high for businesses. And so that's where the equity comes in, because those large commercial facilities are producing the most runoff. Yeah.
So there are a couple of different ways it's been done. What Saul described with the equivalent residential unit, the ERU, that's pretty standard. Most communities are using that, but there are different variations they can use. And the consultant that we've hired will explore those and present options. There'll be a public part of the process where they will present and get feedback. But in the end, we probably look at one of the more simpler ways of doing it and applying it.
And you're
Needs to approve this, whatever model we go with.
Well, the first thing, and we do have a schedule, I
I'm
believe,
sorry,
right?
you keep
Yes.
interrupting you. Yeah.
Do you want to get through it and then?
Yeah, so we
yeah.
can, we'll go back to these. So Saul, if you can
Yeah,
kind of
that'll
walk
be
us,
answered in
Okay.
the slides.
walk us through the slides and then we'll come back, because this is good conversation, but
Mhm.
maybe you can get informed with a few slides here.
So where are we?
Let's see, I passed
right
over this
here.
one, right?
Yeah, go back.
You were
one. Yeah,
there.
That's good. You
Yeah.
can go skip one. Yeah, that
Yep.
one there.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, so some of our current challenges for the stormwater program include meeting regulatory compliance. So this year, yes, we were able to substantially meet the requirements in-house with some help from some consultants. But going forward, we don't have the funds to meet the regulatory compliance as seen with the $1 million that we'll need to invest for BMP green infrastructure.
So what does
What
that,
are you
what's that
showing
table
on this
sort of trying to show us?
Yeah, so the table here is discussing the more frequent intense storms. It's related to what Eric was talking about. This summer, we had 2 100-year storms. This image that you're seeing is from NOAA, and this estimates your storm severity based on depth of rain per time period. And so you can see for the 100-year, 60-minute, 1 hour essentially, you can have 2.59 inches of rain, and that's equivalent to a 100-year storm. We exceeded that twice this summer.
Jeez. Maybe on Saturday.
And maybe on Saturday. Oh, yeah. And so another challenge that we have is that we're a growing community, maybe not by population, but by impervious area. A lot of homes are, the smaller homes are, being demolished with, and new estates essentially are being raised. Some of the benefits of implementing a stormwater utility, I think primarily is that we would have a dedicated revenue source, which would enhance our stormwater management. It would reduce flood risk for residents and properties. It would improve our water quality through the MS4. In this graph, what you're seeing is the effects of stream quality by impervious cover. So at 10% of watershed impervious cover, you're already impacting stream quality. At 25%, you're basically not supporting aquatic life anymore without mitigation efforts in place. Next slide, please. And for our stormwater utility timeline and next steps, now through December, we're working with Weston and Sampson to develop a 10-year CIP that will help to figure out what the rate structure will be. We will continue to do stormwater working group meetings and prepare outreach. In December, January, we're going to draft a warrant article to present at town meeting. In the January to March timeframe, we will be developing that rate structure. After we've developed that 10-year CIP, we will continue public meetings and outreach. In April, we want to present the article to town meeting. And in March through June, we'll finalize the stormwater budget, the rates, and a credit policy. And if all goes well, perhaps tentatively, we could have a fee in effect by July 1st of the next fiscal year.
So just help me. So this would be on property owners, additional fee over and above what property owners pay now on property tax and whatever.
Mhm.
And
So
I'm sorry, who knows about that outside of this room?
Well,
Because I'm just concerned that just after the whole middle school thing, people just will outcry heavily.
Mhm.
Well,
Same concern.
I think that the idea is that this is gonna have to be paid for one way or another. So you're either gonna pay for it through the general fund, or you can pay through it more equitably through the stormwater utility. But one way or another, these funds will need to be found to pay for stormwater
But
management.
where is the equity part coming in here? 'Cause if you would tell me it's like this, there's some kind of a base coverage, like the median household with a kind of a median kind of a driveway is covered by the general fund. But everyone who's just kind of putting asphalt across his whole lot, they have to pay up. Then I would say there's some measure in it where the general fund covers kind of a certain baseline without someone who has a median household with a median income paying again more on fees and taxes. If that is covered in a general fund, and then for people who just go to the extreme, there's additional fee because they put asphalt on every piece of the ground, then I would say there's a logic behind it. But if you come on the next town meeting, because everyone is paying more after the property tax goes up and
So,
they just played around with the way the property tax will be
Right.
calculated. You have to do much more education.
right.
We
So-
have to do more education. It's not they, it's we. We're
Yeah.
we're part of the
Yeah,
the solution and the problem.
yeah.
So what we're doing, consultant Weston and Sampson, they've had the experience in many of those towns that we've shown. They've been there and they've taken the message
Yeah.
to the public. Now, they have to go through the exercise, and that's written in their scope, what they have to do. They have to look at gaps in our system today. They will go through, they will look at, what we spend on stormwater management today through the general funds and otherwise. Right? And they will also look at what our needs are. You've seen our needs, right? It's the MSFL program starting back in 2003 and getting ever so more stringent every time to give a new permit. And it's all that the MS4 has been working from water quality through housekeeping that we've been doing, street sweeping, catch basin cleaning, into now phosphorus reduction. And I think what they're leading to when the new permit comes out, they're probably looking at infrastructure problems. They haven't really been focused on infrastructure issues. They've been asking me over the years, can you map exactly what you have? But I think that's where they're going. We already know we have infrastructure issues. You've seen the pictures of the clogged pipes, the broken pipes, and that kind of thing, the undercapacity of the system. And I think that's where the MS4 is going. So these unfunded mandates are going to keep coming, and just to solve this Clean Water Act from the 70s, that's not going away. So Weston Sampson is going to help us trying to figure out what our costs are, how much we are funding today, what is our gap. Now, if Sven is correct that the general fund is funding a certain amount to meet some baseline, and all we need is that additional amount, and how can we pass that additional amount to the rest of the community? That's going to be determined, and that's going to be presented as options and to the public before we go to the town meeting. We're going to have more outreach and education, have commissions like yours involved in the discussions.
Do you have a sense as to the annual amount that that the utility expects to or hopes to raise? Are we talking $1
well,
million?
Let's just use what have other communities been raising?
Yeah, so Wellesley generates about $3 million a year from their stormwater utility, as does Dedham. I think Lexington's looking somewhere about the same range. And their fees are probably about, for the average, that I think would be about 60 to 70% of the community would be at around $150 to $200 per year. And then obviously some of the commercial and other institutions that aren't currently taxed, such as schools, churches, nonprofits, those will also be included in the fee, so, and those are areas where they're not funding the general fund.
Yeah.
And so this way, and they're large runoff contributors, so this is a way to help them pay into the system.
So I was just doing a little bit of thinking. We've probably raised $100 million. That's our total budget. If I think of the two schools in the town, that's going to be $100 million a year. If this was $1 million, that's 1%. So it would be 1% of your property taxes would be
No,
a
no,
quick estimate.
no, the 100 million is stretched over 25 years.
No,
No, that's a loan.
no. That's what we spend every year. The school budgets are over 33.
Oh, yeah, we mean that, I thought, I thought the.
Well, no, I'm just saying what we raise on property taxes every year.
Yeah.
Well, not property taxes, only 90% of what we raise, but I'm just saying it's the whole thing. It's easily 100, I think it might even be 120 million. I don't have the numbers on my back of my head. So million is this is 1% of property tax revenue. Approximately $1 million would be. If it's $3 million, it's 3%. Just to give you a sense of what it is. So if your property taxes are $12,000, it's $120 is 1%.
Yeah, well, I have to see the numbers.
So just to give you a sense of the magnitude of the numbers we're talking about, because I had no idea how much we're trying to cut into that $12.5 million need to get a sense of where things are.
Build off of what you're saying, I think the education, and you probably know it's gonna be very important, because someone could use what you just said and say, well, the property tax, why can't the town devote 1% to stormwater as opposed to 50,000?
Well,
Why do we need?
Because we can't even get enough money for the roads right now.
It's a matter of
Yeah.
the town prioritizing where they spend the money.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it will take a lot of education. And is there any, I know it's going to be our warrant article, but are you going before the select board anytime soon to talk about what Public
Yeah,
Works
well,
is coming up
This
with?
is the beginning, and working with the town manager's office was the whole concept of, I think some of the ARPA funds have been used to fund this assessment.
Okay.
So it's on the radar
Okay.
and been identified as a priority. And, it's interesting, ironic, Concord, who embraces the environment and our stream systems so intimately, this is a direct connect with, our water management on stormwaters. And it's going to be, eye-opening. And our job is to sort of make sure that we're sharing information, having Weston and Sampson as far as their other models, what have they learned? No one says this will be easy, but much like everything, there really isn't, an alternative is simply to just sort of hope it goes away. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
No, but so we're gonna
Another
have to.
option is to make sure that, I'm not arguing one way or the
Yeah,
other.
sure, yeah.
I understand the model. I've seen it in other communities. What I like about it is it's a dedicated fund. So it doesn't go into the general fund where you have to argue for it every year. It goes into the stormwater utility fund. And basically, you're estimating every year how much you're gonna have in that, like we have it for, the fund for water and sewer and all those things. So it can't be tapped into for other things. I like that part of it because we can control, not we, but
The
can
town
be
has-
controlled.
yeah.
it's also a matter of, again, how we sell it. And I don't think we should sell it as in, we can't afford it, so we have to do this. That wouldn't fly with me. Because we can afford it. It's just a matter of how we prioritize spending town money.
So we talk about okay, we have $1 million to retrofit the 10 properties. We have $12.5 million to just deal with the capacity issues we have right now. This was in the presentation. So we have $13.5 million there right now. We have to assume we have to kind of seeing more of these extreme weather things. if we have to assume we have, let's say, double the capacity for stormwater for all the climate change that is coming, how much is that?
Well, we probably wouldn't go that far because we have to be realistic about it, you know?
Then increase it by 50%.
I think we have to start with understanding what we have out there. We don't have a good picture.
That's what Eric's study is gonna.
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
us,
but-
is how much we need to increase it.
Yeah. But today, we don't have a good picture of the maintenance needs of a closed system, you know? What are the conditions of the pipe are? We have to do videoing, cleaning, that kind of thing, understand, because some of these pipes are old and they're falling apart. So we first have to get that system that has been long ignored to work in order. Before we start,
Why wouldn't we increase the capacity right then?
well, so that decision has to be made.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just like a roads program, you know. To keep up with the PCI, the pavement condition index, there's so much money to make it improved, right? So that we have traffic solutions and so on, sidewalks. That's a cost above that. So we gotta, you know, so what we always go back to our core functions as public works. Let's get what's under our jurisdiction or our purview for, as you know, for operations and maintenance, get them in working order, and then we'll start expanding. Or we can expand slowly as we go. But remember, expansions are always going to cost you way beyond anybody's thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe I missed it, but what is the cost of not doing this? What if we don't do this?
To come out of
Kind of
general fund.
Probably have MS4.
We've been doing this, so
problems.
the stormwater is considered sort of in the industry, the orphan utility, because it's a function that the community benefits from. But because there's no one really managing it, other than maintaining it,
Yeah.
this orphan has been identified nationally as a problem. EPA has said this is an issue, which is why we have the MS4 program. And so they've been introducing this slowly, as you know, Steve has mentioned. It's about water quality protection, but it's also about identifying your assets, and ultimately it's about managing those assets.
No, I
So
mean,
the
as a,
cost is, it's like a roads program that isn't invested in, right? We have these culverts, the stormwater system. So I think part of our communication is to answer that question. Because people will ask, well, can't we just leave it alone?
Right.
Or just, you
as a
know,
Concord resident who's already overpaying for schools and, other things, I mean, facetious, obviously.
Yeah.
Why do we have to do this?
Yeah.
And I know I believe there's a
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
And obviously some of it, just look at Lemonster. That's what I mean, is we have to really bring this home to.
Yeah.
Why?
All you have to do is look at the pictures of the slides from.
Yeah.
There's certain neighborhoods in our town
Yeah.
are in
We
trouble.
have to make, and that's gonna get worse.
But is there a way to have kind of all the capital needs we as public works have across the board, somehow in an order of magnitude? It doesn't need to be exactly down to the penny, but an order of magnitude. One is stormwater, then we have streets, then we have whatever, water.
drinking water.
Yeah, we have bridges we have to
Bridges,
touch.
correct.
Yeah. And we get this all crammed somehow on one piece of paper, saying these are all the investments that the town has in front of us. And I don't know, have a meeting with the finance committee and say, guys, these are the investments that are coming your way, and they're most likely underestimated because of climate change. This will all cost more. How do we as town can deal with it? One way is we set up a stormwater utility here, but then we still have to deal with the bridges. We still have to deal with other. So how do we deal with these multi-million dollars? And if I just recount the numbers on the streets and recount these numbers, we're talking another middle school here. Yeah. So
Easily.
where does the money come from? Because that is only one way to solve one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the town really has a full picture, but perhaps I'm wrong.
No, so I think a few years ago, the town and through the finance committee did start saying, we need to look at these capital plans over a 5-year period. That was new.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just year to year and you can kind of hope it disappears. Let's look at it in 5 years. With our engineering group, we started capturing these costs and we presented them. They were not funded, but Public Works did start the exercise of ballpark order of magnitude, what we think is necessary. And, you know, we're continuing that. And where we identified a need with the stormwater, we were told that really not now, that was the answer last year, but look into a stormwater utility because we understand that is happening across the country, really. So we're doing these things. We don't expect everything's going to be solved tomorrow, but we're going to continue to identify and spend the idea is how does the town want to see it? Is, you know, this is a good conversation here. I think Public Works should be taking our best stab at it. And then we can present it. And then it can be, you know, vetted more publicly. And sometimes it's just so big, some people just get turned off and just don't want to look at it. But our job is not to hide anything. It's literally, here are the needs. And I think with the stormwater, we're a little bit, other than order of magnitude, we haven't done a lot since last year because we weren't funded to do much. Other than this study, which is what we've engaged. We've got a consultant on board. It's FY24, so we're using that money. It was through ARPA funds to help us get our feet under us, and that's what we're doing. And it might take some time, but this schedule you see may be aggressive, but I'm not sure we're going to go through all these steps, and then we'll have to see, you know, where do we stand? But we got to go through all these steps.
Steve, to tie up and build upon Dave's question, if we, not that we wouldn't, but if the town wasn't to do anything, doesn't the feds come in and say, well, an enforcement order, or whatever they call it, you have to do these things?
Yes, yes, and
People
some,
need to understand that too.
and
You
even
can't-
some towns have chosen not to do even the simple things, like street sweeping, catch basin cleaning, and they've gotten audited and they've gotten fined and that kind of thing. Not very large amounts, but more like, you know, it's embarrassing when they end up in the paper,
Yeah.
in the Boston Globe or something like that. But as we know, every time they issue a new permit, the measures become more stringent, more costly. So you got to prepare for that. Now, I always tell people, you know, if you work for, if you're in a town like this that really cherishes, you know, your environment, I'd rather work towards keeping an environment pristine or cleaning it up, as opposed to the feds telling us to do that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a better sell for me. However, we can ignore that they can put a mandate on you and give you a consent decree, a court action, and you have to do it. Otherwise, you got to pay the piper.
Yeah.
But to me, Sven, the deferred, well, whoever, I think it was you, deferred maintenance is an easy choice, right?
Right.
For infrastructure like buildings and so on, we all do that. It's easy, especially when you have a middle school to build. You know, underground assets are even harder or easier to defer
Yeah,
because you're not seeing it all the time.
Mhm.
And when it comes to stormwater and drainage, you have those on years and you have those off years. This year is a great reminder. Now, yeah, we're capitalizing on that, right? We got Leominster there, we got Vermont, and yeah, we got it all, more to come, I think. But so in the drought years, you don't think about it, right?
Right.
So that's why. So we have to have a program in place.
No, I
Yes.
agree. We should not postpone. The first push is what can be put in to the general budget. So what's there? Because the town needs to budget properly for the things that need to be covered. And then comes what needs to be done over and above, and then elements like this come in. Is there another way to finance things that can over and above? But a $50,000 budget line item for stormwater,
Right.
that's deferred maintenance, and that probably goes on for how long? How many decades?
It's,
Yeah.
but it's gonna be harder and harder as we
It
raise,
costs more and
as
more.
we raise the awareness, and EPA pushes those who don't. So. So I think that's,
Yeah, thanks
in
for-
essence, the.
Thanks for the information.
A lot to think about and
Yeah, really.
But on that schedule, so the draft for the, given I had my own little article on the last town meeting. So you have to be done by December, more or less.
I think our plan is to have some general language for the article, only to adopt a stormwater utility. We won't have the rate structure in place. We might have an idea of what the rate would be, but not the actual rate. I think that would be up to this commission to adopt the actual rate.
But you will have then hearings already on it in January.
March. Hearings are usually in March, I think.
Finance committee, will have the.
End of February, early March.
The funding gap be identified by the December timeframe?
We have an idea, yeah.
And the finance committee is aware of this.
Well, this is the first real, this is
Yeah.
the launch of the fact that we've got a consultant on board. Other than the ARPA funds that have been there to support the assessment of a utility. This is the first conversation.
this is the first conversation. Okay.
For public works.
Yeah.
But again, with the fact that ARPA funds have been identified, there's been conversations. And last year, when we talked about this, at least for the town manager's office, there was a understanding that, well, $500,000 we can't do. Let's fund this study. So there's been discussions, but this is the beginning of the public awareness of these discussions. And no one says
This
it's
is our initiative now.
it-
It's not, didn't come from the select board or any other request.
well, I think it should be coming through Public Works because we've been managing the
I'm saying it's-
stormwater. That's right.
This is
We're
clarifying.
initiating.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, there's no other entity that's really, as I said, the stormwater orphan has always been managed through Public Works.
Yep.
Okay, well, that'll be interesting to see. how
Yeah.
this turns out.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and
Thank you.
presentation. It was very informative.
Thank you.
So Dave, I know Dave, you're got like 10 minutes, but okay.
Thank you.
Alright. So we're going on to
Directors.
director's report. Yeah, okay.
In 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes.
Fine.
we'll-
10 minutes. Make it through the
We're
first
doing all
page.
right. We'll do okay, but I have talked to staff and they are aware that we want to move things quickly. So with that, I'm going to say, let's get this started with first and foremost, some announcements we included in the director's report. We have a lot of staffing, a lot of transition going on. And just wanted to identify Pete Hardy has been sort of a long-standing operator, crew member, worked the water sewer division since I got on board in 1996, but he actually predated me, worked in the 80s. He was there in the mid 80s as an equipment operator for the highway grounds group. And Pete is just your consummate sort of, operator, grew up in Concord, knows the community, knows who lives in what house and behind which barn and where the water shutoff is, where no one else would know. But Pete has just been sort of a remarkable addition, and he's retiring for all the right reasons. And he's identified some interest in kind of his family and personal needs and interests, and has said, it's unlike Aaron Rodgers, he's sort of choosing his time, not the other way around. So, we're really appreciative of Pete's efforts, and we'll be missing him and hope we'll see him around. But in any event, that's just one update. Also, go ahead.
We seem to have a little tradition or something that you started, or that, which is making sure that he gets a letter from
From the commission,
from the
yeah,
commission.
that'd be
thanking-
nice.
Thanking him from his service.
Do that
Can
for
we
me.
do that and you
Sure,
sign it, you
absolutely.
sign it? It seems to be a nice touch. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
we got 2 days.
Okay.
We'll know where to find Pete,
Okay.
so anyway, so,
Great.
and then on incoming, just to sort of talk a little bit about some of the transition. I want to introduce Jennifer Mills. Jennifer is actually here tonight. Um, Jen it's a new position within Public Works. We sort of, with our reorganization, it wasn't a new FTE, but it was just sort of right sizing in an area we sort of identified where we put a lot of attention into environmental protection, our human resources. Well, Jen is here to kind of help Public Works and the town with our, human assets and health, environmental health and safety manager. So Jen has come on board to sort of help us identify the needs, the risks, what we can do to do our work better, safer, and with an environmental, sensitivity as well. So Jen, welcome aboard. This is a fairly recent graduate from Mass Maritime Association. So she's gotten a lot of good experience and we're excited to have her join our team. So welcome. Welcome.
Welcome.
And also on some of our reorg, we have over the past summer, due to some transition in the senior group with the facilities department, town manager had come and sort of asked Public Works if we would sort of not necessarily take on this, they're not an orphan. Facilities used to work within the town manager's office. They sort of outgrew their kind of responsibilities and some of the needs. And basically because of the staff that we have on board in Public Works and sort of some synergy in some of the work that we do. Aaron McCloskey, as you know, is our highway ground superintendent, but also has a lot of experience in facilities management, had done so in some other communities, was willing to step up and help take on the facilities group. So we are, a few months into evaluating what their needs are and sort of trying to incorporate them into the culture of Concord Public Works. So Aaron is working closely with John Stragus, who is the senior representative for the facilities group. So John will be a name that you'll probably hear about more as we kind of
Does that
proceed.
mean for next year that budget's gonna fall under?
That budget will likely be within Public
More
Works.
things we have to fight for.
More things we need to advocate
You
for.
know, recognized for this increased responsibility.
Is Aaron recognized? We recognize Aaron every day for all. of his work.
Recognized in a meaningful way.
I'll take that under advisement. No, and it's Aaron. Eric Shaw has been asked to step up. He's the assistant highway ground superintendent. Steve Dukran has been asked to step in a little bit. Facilities has vertical construction. We'll talk a little about some of the initiatives they have that we've inherited. So it does affect, the entire department and, we welcome them aboard. We just have to figure out how to be more efficient and sort of incorporate them into our sort of day-to-day, but it's a good operations group. We're glad to have them.
And you're getting enough budget now with it, or?
We have their budget, but part of the challenge we have is we need our management group to understand, well, what is the basis of the budget? Is it, appropriate? And, what can we do to make it efficient and at the same time get the needs of the town addressed? So facilities does buildings, but also they have parks, Giroux land, like pond, some in park support, so that sort of thing we're also considering. Steve, I'll have you come on up real briefly if we can. I'm going to say you can get through with your, in 5 minutes, what we need for engineering. I'm going to sort of try and keep you to that because everybody's going to have
Okay.
5.
Yeah,
Okay.
one quick thing.
Yeah.
I just skipped over Stefan's departure.
Oh, excuse me. Well, it was in the book. We had a lot of updates, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, okay. All right, so just a couple of pictures here to tell what we've been doing over the past couple of months. Commonwealth Avenue, the project started in July, and we got the road reclaimed and binded. And we've started the sidewalk work. Actually, we did quite a bit of drainage work as well out there. And so work has started. They poured one section. They're working on another section in the last couple of days. The rain's been getting in the way. We like the rain, but not what it does to us. So we'll see how, if we can get it done. Our goal is to get all the sidewalk done, get it to final completion by the end of the year. Based on the new schedule, we are pushing it to November now, but we're keeping our fingers crossed.
What has held it up? I'm sorry, I missed that. What is?
Rain,
Just the
rain
rain,
days.
right.
So, folks need to understand that when it rains, it not only affects us, it affects other communities. If the contract has the project started over there,
I
it
see.
gets pushed a couple of days, they gotta continue there, and therefore they can't come here.
And you got started late anyway because of that too, right? Like dealing with the utilities, was it National Grid or somewhat like
Yes.
they were finishing up? It was
And then
delayed start too.
supply of curbing and all
Yes.
of that.
So I've had people asking me about it.
I think for the most part, there's been a lot of outreach. The neighborhood understands the impact. It's been significant. But they also know that we're getting to a point where with the improved drainage, we didn't have the funds last year. We were able to incorporate that, so that was a benefit. And, you know, we have been providing a lot of outreach, but the neighborhood's been very, accommodating and understanding, so.
So this one, a quick note on this one's Sudbury Road sidewalk project, a small section of sidewalk at 192 Sudbury Road. We worked in partnership with the commercial entity there, Toombs Realty, and we contributed half of the cost of the sidewalk. And so it's completed. And they also given us an easement because we have to move the sidewalk to avoid taking off a tree. So that easement is in the works. It will be going to town meeting, next town meeting for approval. All right, and this is a plan of work that we intend to do this year. Saul prepared this plan. It went up to bid. It's in the contract, and it will be installed. It's here to solve a drainage problem over there at the Fairyland Park. Giroux, as Alan mentioned, we inherited this project. The pictures there tell you the situation. It looks like an abandoned wreck. But it has the middle picture shows the restaurant building that's completed. And the pavilion building, just the structure's up. It's been up for almost a year, right? Because the contractor left last July, simply because of difficulty in resolving a dispute concerning payments and so on. And so we've taken over the project. I've reached out to the contractor, and we've discussed what it'll take to get back them on the project. I've also reached out to the consultant, the engineer that prepared the plans, and will be helping with the construction administration. We're working through the financial issues, and hopefully we'll have them back on within the next month. So and have it completed by the end of the year. And let me just spend a couple minutes on this one. This study, under the direction of staff over the land management, has started. They've hired Stantec to perform this comprehensive study, comprehensive transportation study. And so it's just got kicked off. It had a couple of meetings. The goals of this project is to work towards Envision Concord. There are goals in Envision Concord 2030 to prioritize the complete streets list. I think you've seen that before. And also to generate other projects and give them a cost that can be built in a practicable sense. Not just to have a project on the books. Here we have projects to solve mobility and transportation issues. They'll be looking at policies and trying to balance policies with the implementation. In the end, they want to have a document, an overarching document that will help the town move forward with solving its mobility issues whether it's public transit or just traffic issues or other multimodal methods like bicycling, pedestrian type activities. So this consultant with staff will be looking at all these things. And a steering committee made up of commissions, including yours, will be included. And so that I think we're working towards that and having a meeting in a couple of weeks. So you'll see the invitation for that. And a series of public outreach meetings is planned, at least 3 public outreach meetings where they would have a workshop type setting and to get input to lay out certain strategies that the consultant is using. And then the last one will be recommendations as to what the plan will be to produce that final document. So that has started. It looks like, there's a lot of work ahead, and the study is also being paid for by ARPA money. And so the hope here is to have number of not just ideas, but plans that the town can put in place in the coming years regarding transportation and mobility.
And Steve has been asked, again, through the town manager's office to participate actively. This was initiated through planning, but Steve has experience in transportation, and there's been transition in planning as well. Marsha Rasmussen had retired, fairly soon. Megan Zamoto, who's the new deputy town manager, is sort of a interim or stepping in to try and lead the group over here. And Aaron Stevens has been a point person, but so it's a planning effort, but Steve is being asked to step in and sort of make sure, sort of put the hand on the tiller and hope that we can get something that's more than just a plan, but maybe something actionable. That's really the interest. And TAC, the Transportation Advisory Committee, is a key player in this initiative, but Public Works will also be involved. So Steve, thank you for.
My final word is just about an hour ago, what a famous person said, it depends on for these studies how much we can harness and leverage to put into action. Remember those words? Just an hour ago, it was mentioned at the table. Not just another study.
There you go. Not just another study. Jeff, why don't you come on up?
I can stay a little longer.
Jeff Morosky, Water Sewer Superintendent.
Yeah, thanks.
Jeff, again, thank you for being here. A little brevity is going to be important. I will say, if you can take some time to read through the packet, if you haven't, there's a lot of meat.
Yeah.
And I know staff often get frustrated with what's not getting done.
Yeah.
But when you look back and look at what's actually being done in Public Works, it's pretty phenomenal. But anyway, Jeff, it's just real.
Can I ask you, have you ever thought about posting this with minutes? When you post our minutes, like post this director's report, is that like too much information?
It's always a balance of what are people interested, but Jim is asked about that in the past. I think we can kind of figure out a way is there a way to keep people
Well,
updated? It's good
It's
information. Yeah,
there
right.
For people to
definitely.
read, they don't have to read it,
No,
but it's
correct.
very interesting, and I often wish that my neighbors would read it.
We're just glad that you are. But
I
anyway,
have to do it for them.
duly noted. Jeff.
Thank you, Alan. In this slide, I'm highlighting a water main break event we had in the mid-month of August. Just to put things in perspective, if you were to nick your pinky and you would have a capillary bleed, it's much different than if you were to nick your brachial artery, your femoral artery. In this case, this was Lowell Road. We've got a 12-inch diameter cast iron water main. Lower right-hand corner, that's a blown out section of the pipe. If you look at these two graphs, what I'm trying to show here is the value and the correlation that our eye hydrant that's outside these windows out at the Lowell pump station, it correlates with our SCADA. You can see the drop down in the top graph. That's a pressure drop that the eye hydrant's registering. Before we implemented the eye hydrant, we only have one so far, actually two. I'm going to speak to that a little bit later. We've often used our 2 water storage reservoirs as our early alert system.
we have pressure transducers that are measuring the vertical pressure of the water within the reservoir. And when there's a drop in that pressure, it's one of our first alerts and we get SCADA alarms. So in this case, this is simply showing the value of this. In this particular case, this is a major artery. We did, from the time that we were notified of the break to the time that we isolated it by valving closed valves on the line, it was just over an hour. So that was actually excellent response time and excellent shutdown. It was a very challenging repair, but it shows the value of the system. And we did actually implement our second eye hydrant and we incorporated it into the Butternut Circle neighborhood. And I'll point out where in the next slide after this one. This is again our ortho photo showing Nagog Pond. The liner or the intake pipe liner was installed in late June. It was installed, I believe, on June 26th. The commissioning and acceptance of that liner is still pending. The contractor is working with the installer that is the subcontractor that actually pulled the liner into place, as well as the material vendor for the liner to develop a standard operating procedure in order to get that final acceptance in place. It's been challenging. We're still working on it. Next slide. This is the overview of our Butternut Circle project. And this is Mallard Drive right here. Is a cul-de-sac island at the end of Mallard. That's where we situated our second eye hydrant. So this is in the northeast portion of the distribution system, close to Bedford. This project has gone very successfully in our view. It's still ongoing, but we're on pace to meet our schedule. All the mains are in, all the mains are pressure tested, disinfected, bacteria tested, and we're in the process of installing water service replacements from the corporation on the main to the curb stop. We've got about another less than 15 remaining out of about 52 services to install. So this has gone very well. We've had very good response and support, understanding of the residents of the neighborhood. And I think that's in no small part to the efforts we put into communication, both before the work started, as well as the work has progressed. We're looking forward to final completing this later this month, and then we'll be handing the baton off to the roads program, where we'll be undertaking a roads restoration project. Steve can talk to that a little bit more at a future date.
Just, can we go back? I was in a planning board yesterday and we're discussing on another project, what is 1053 ADX on Main Street, where the idea is that the water main should be looped between Main and another street.
Mhm.
And a question came up, which I see here too, is like, there is one part that is a dead end. So you have dead ends here too. So are you looping into the dead ends, or how do you loop in this case?
In this area, it's replaced as is. And generally, when you're looking at new planning, you look at a way of sort of connecting these. You don't like dead ends because they're sort of become stagnant. So there is no change in this configuration based on this replacement. So they're replacing pipe that had been failed. I think we had maybe 8 breaks in here over the course of a decade. It's just a lot. And we just knew that the material had been saturated, but Sven, it's a design consideration that we look at every time we do a project, but there was no way to really enhance this or change it significantly. So we kind of were left with the original configuration as was designed in the 50s.
Okay. But so I think on that specific, the developer will come back to you on that.
On the new one to find out what are we doing, and just as a policy, if they meet our design standards, then they wouldn't come back to the Public Works Commission, because the Public Works Commission is sort of, historically, if there's no reason to have another hearing and they meet all our standards, it goes to the planning board. If they don't meet all of our standards, it would come to the Public Works Commission for an exemption or consideration, something that they wouldn't visit at the planning.
There's also a large parcel that's subdivided as a part of that project, and I think the applicant proponent is looking for additional sewer services, which is in contrast to one of our policies, but we won't get into that now.
Yeah. So we try not to make things worse with new development, but you know, that's an example of what had been approved. And then finally on water, just to give everybody a heads up, the MWRA Metro West system expansion assessment has been completed. The overview is that they have the capacity to meet the Metro West area. It's a number of communities. I think I may have mentioned they've also looked at the North Shore and South Shore. But at this point, they've done a lot of effort, which really gives Concord an opportunity to now have some serious dialogue with some of our surrounding communities to look at this and say, is there and should we be evaluating expansion? And, you know, Concord has the challenges of NAGOG. We have the challenges of PFAS and treatment. And the other communities around us are also trying to grapple with what do they need to do as far as today, and is that really a long-term, you know, plan? But you're going to hear more about this. We have a task force sort of working more closely with staff on this, but I just wanted people to be aware that the report has been complete. And we're also working with Kleinfelder. They're an engineering firm on looking at our hydraulics, our system hydraulics, to understand, well, you know, how would we even accommodate a regional supply if it were to come into, you know, near the community. So stay tuned on that.
Can I have a couple of questions on
Sure.
that one? So this seems to be a 45-year project.
Yep.
If everything goes according plan. Is there kind of a small interim solution
Yes.
possible, like, because Bedford is already connected? Is there a way to get connection via Bedford, at least for kind of a
So there's two ideas.
possible
Yeah.
water supply?
Yeah, so there's the concept of wheeling where you can purchase it through another community. Bedford, potentially Wayland. Or we've talked with MWRA and some of the communities like Sudbury, Lincoln, Concord, Wayland, Maynard are very eager to say, is there some other phase that we can look at to say maybe a smaller phase, but the one that would allow for future expansion if need be. So we're exploring all of these angles.
Because what they're proposing is in the end making Concord the central hub.
It may be.
And then going there, connecting Bedford again. That's why I came like, if you have,
Correct.
they have to build a Bedford connection anyway. Is there a way to get water earlier via the current?
All those are under
Backdoor.
consideration. Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes. But it's not, and I could get into the details and we will go back there,
Yeah.
but not tonight.
Okay.
Okay, Aaron.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. The request of the chair, we were trying to allow some time for the commission comments and observations of activities too. So Aaron, with that said,
Good evening, everyone.
Hi,
Hope everyone had a nice summer.
we're back from
Thank you.
Vermont.
Appreciate
Did you
it,
have a
yeah.
nice summer?
Yeah, yeah, it was a great summer.
Yeah.
Actually. Very active, very busy.
Really?
Yeah. Aaron McCloskey, Highway and Grounds Superintendent. So we'll give a brief overview of some of the activity that took place in Highway and Grounds Division of the summer. The first slide focuses kind of on cemetery. On the left, Tish Hopkins, Cemetery Supervisor Doug Lennox is a parking fee specialist. They're installing a veteran marker headstone at the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. It's kind of part of regular routine operations. Photos on the right, we have annual headstone restoration. We budget at least $10,000 a year with the support of the cemetery committee to do headstone restorations, typically of historic headstones. When I say historic, kind of like of a certain vintage, if you will. or headstones that have been damaged throughout the years, whether it's kind of just naturally or if they were maybe struck by a downed tree. On the photo, until the right, photos to the right, the kind of the before and after of some restoration work that's been done. It's kind of an ongoing annual effort that we budget for. We contract those services out. Few projects on the left, there's some sidewalk reconstruction, working closely with the butter, the property at their request. We evaluated the sidewalk, working with engineering, determined that section needed to be repaved. We did that work in-house with highway crew. Photo in the middle, kind of routine tree pruning and Monument Square downtown. And on the right is some tree pruning as a result of some storm damage at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Those are both being completed by our highway and grounds crew. I will note that the buck truck in the photo is scheduled to be replaced. It was funded 2 years ago. We were waiting on the truck to be delivered to the town. That was ordered over a year ago from International, Taylor and Lloyd in Bedford.
Can I ask you a question? Since you had trees in that picture, we had just a storm this past week. I think there were a bunch of trees down in this town, right?
Absolutely.
I know-
I got to the slide. I was going to talk about it.
Oh,
but I can talk about it now.
No.
Yeah,
If you're gonna get to that. then-
Last slide.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. Absolutely. So we work closely with the engineering department to do line painting. There's a lot of lines and directional painted items on the pavement, whether it's in the roadway or parking lots in town. Engineering contracts out kind of we call them the long lines, the things in the public rights of way, such as the center lines, the fog lines, the stop bars, the arrows, the onlys, the crosswalks. Anything in parking lots, typically last year and this year moving forward, we're doing in-house. So the town public works department purchased a line painting machine. It used to be contracted work. We're able to bring it in-house. It's cheaper. And it also gives our crews opportunity to work some overtime. And they enjoy it and overnight work. You can see Doug Lennox again, Parker Tree Specialist. We offer to kind of everybody. Highway crews participate as well. And they're painting kind of the one-way entrance for the parking lot right there with some stencils. Kind of last photo, as was mentioned previously, I also work with FEMA's Urban Search and Rescue Team, Massachusetts Task Force 1, and was deployed to the Vermont flooding in July for 9 days. I was scheduled on vacation, came back Saturday from the Cape, and Sunday night got the phone call to go to Vermont. So unfortunately,
One vacation to another.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so was gone for a little while, but it was a great experience. Walter Ladder on the right is the assistant fire chief for the town of Concord. He's also on the team, as well as Todd Nemi, who is a lieutenant firefighter for the town of Concord. He's a hazmat specialist on the task force.
We're in Vermont.
All over. So we started kind of White River Junction area. And from there, we staged it. This is at Berlin Airport. We were there for a few days. From there, we went north up to Colchester, Vermont, and worked at a Colchester Fire Department. And then we're instructed to go south to Springfield, Vermont. Worked out of there for the last few days before being demobilized back to Beverly. So long operational periods. I think the first day we were activated about 9:30 night on Sunday night. We were wheels up out of Beverly at 8 a.m. and worked until 3 a.m. the following morning, Tuesday morning, and then back at 7 a.m. and then another 2 a.m. day. That was kind of the momentum for the first couple of days. We did a lot of active rescues. I think there were 29 people that were rescued by our team and some pets as well. And from there, we did some structural assessments of some bridges, culverts, some piers up north, some roadways, because we have engineers on the team. So we provide whatever services the local entities need. So at the height of the storm, there were 2 federal teams, us in New York, that were activated and deployed, and about 15 other state teams from around the country. As far west as Michigan, far south as the Carolinas, South Carolina came up. But it was a good deployment, good.
Dial it local.
Huh?
Dial it local.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, so now, kind of, to your question earlier, the storm event we had on Friday night, we had a severe kind of quick thunderstorm kind of roll through town. Not a lot of rain, but high winds. We had trees coming down starting at about 2 o'clock to maybe 5 o'clock was the actual storm event. And then from there, a lot of saturated trees and fall damage came down. We responded to 130 tree calls for trees down or large branches in the public right of
How do
way.
you prioritize those?
Roadway opening. So our priorities are roadway opening. So that night, a lot of roads were closed. It happened at school dismissal time. So buses were stopped. It caused a lot of problems. So we are working very closely with the police department, the fire department, and CMLP. A lot of overhead utility and tree and wires calls. We can't touch trees and wires. My crews are not trained. We stay anything within 10 feet of wires, we do not touch. So any trees that are not on wires, we're able to address right away. Otherwise, we work with CMLP. They are able to de-energize and we can take the tree off. We brought in contracted crews from Mare. CMLP brought in contracted crews from Marquis, and we worked closely. That night we worked until about 2 a.m. on Saturday morning. We'd crews come back in on Saturday and on Sunday as well. And then we've been during our regular kind of day shift operations been responding to trees. So our priority is obviously kind of life safety issues, clearing the public right of way, and then clearing the sidewalks and clearing town property, and then follow up in any brush side collection, kind of beautification, right? Bring it back to, you know, how it was before. We're in that last phase right now and continuing on. We do have some trees in the cemetery that we've been addressing. We keep finding new stuff. People will call. We did have some private damage from public shade trees that we're working closely with the insurance company on. There are 3 cars that were crushed by, but were presumed to be public shade trees. We have to confirm that. And another number of private property damages relative to private trees. So we chase kind of all of that. We help residents as much as we can. It was within our capability and our resources. We don't do work on private property unless it was caused by a town tree. So we'll go out, we'll chase trees, we'll spot it, and we'll prioritize crews throughout town as needed. Now that's kind of rolling into obviously this weekend. Hurricane Lee's coming up the coast. I keep a close eye on that from, you know, town perspective, but also FEMA. And I can tell you that we had a call with MEMA, which is the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, about 3 p.m. this afternoon, statewide call with about 400 different participants from municipalities, county, state agencies on. Gave us a brief of kind of their weather update and what they're seeing in the preparations from the state. They are, you know, kind of relating this to a strong nor'easter type of event that could strike. You know, basically the current track is a little bit east, kind of Maine, Canada, Brunswick kind of area. But it's still unknown because that hurricane's so far away right now that it could track farther west. And if it does farther west, that means we're kind of in the path. Federally, they've activated 2 urban search and rescue teams, New York and New Jersey, that are going to Rhode Island and to New Hampshire right now. And the state is kind of holding our team in place in case something is needed here in the Commonwealth. So we'll continue to monitor from a local planning level. I was able to get from the NERAC cache site in Beverly a chipper that we needed for our operations from last weekend and also in preparation for this weekend. I've talked to Mayor Tree, who's our current contractor, and let him know we're probably going to pre-stage resources here in town on Saturday. Probably look current forecast, maybe like midnight Friday. I've notified our crews that we're going to schedule probably most likely overtime for them to be working here that same time. We have an emergency manager call, Alan and I do, with the emergency manager director and other town staff tomorrow morning at 8:30 to kind of continue our plan and prepare for the weekend's events. But we have full confidence we'll be ready to roll should something come down, but just ask for patience as you know, most likely trees are going to come down with the winds that are forecasted in our area right now. You know, 35 to 50 mile an hour sustained winds is going to cause a lot of damage. The trains are saturated, the ground's saturated.
Yeah.
They're leafed out. It's a heavy growing season for the trees. Definitely not a drought season, so everything leafed out pretty well. So,
So a lot of activity. It's been a busy summer, and whether it's, you know, winds or even the flooding, it's saying Public Works is sort of responding.
Yeah.
And even with the water sewer group, you know, when there are these outages, they're chasing around the operations of our stations and trying to keep them running, you know, through intermittent outages and that sort of thing. So it really is, you know, sort of a stress test our operations. But it's good to have people like Aaron, his team, he's sort of ready. And, you know, the preparation we're talking about now is already for, you know, Friday. So we don't just sit and wait. But, you know, I think that's for many years of experience with the winter maintenance stuff, you know, we're kind of geared for this. So, but, you know, the town has a good communication network support group. So, anyway, I think that's it for the director's report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair.
Much. So much in here, I gotta say. This is amazing. This is an amazing document.
I think like, it's like a great resource. I mean, I read through it every time. It's amazing. And that's only half the story. I mean, all the emergency calls that you guys do because of sewer and trees and all that. But I know that some of us have been paying more attention to what other committees and boards are doing. And I know, Sven, you've been like plugged into the planning board. So I didn't know if there was anything you thought should be on our radar. I know they were going over the regulations for the scenic
Yeah,
roads
have a
bylaw.
short update. So on the scenic road bylaw, I think they make major progress. I guess a few items that were left, and I got input here and which I presented there shortly. So I think we're very close to something that should work. A little bit kind of doing a little bit on the rough edges here and there. Probably they're a little bit overestimating how many fees they can charge for taking trees down, because Massachusetts general law limits that to $500.
Yeah, they were,
They were
had,
calculating the thousands.
yeah,
There is a historic element of stone walls in another paragraph, not in a definition of stone walls, but in another paragraph, there is a reference that it needs to have, they need to determine that the stone wall is a historic stone wall. And it's more kind of, if you look at it, you know it, it's not kind of a real timeline behind, but I think it's probably good enough to have some kind of a reference. It needs to be a historic stone wall. And then we're just another smaller item. So it's if you look at it again on the last draft, I think we're getting very close to where it should be.
I'd like to say from staff's perspective, it's been very helpful to have the support. And sometimes we can only get so far staff to staff. And I think the committee member to commission member, and that sort of thing has been helpful. And I sort of appreciate the extra effort. And sort of that, Jim knows from experience, he's just dealing with other volunteers who are really trying to do the best they can as well. And, so your sort of involvement and willingness to sort of help us, help the town has been great. So,
yeah. And the members of the planning board, they really did each go through it and have edits and suggestions, and they had like a very full discussion about it. So it was nice to see that, like, they were really trying to get it right. I mean, you don't know if you got it right the first time until you use it, but they were really putting in effort.
And on last night's planning board, I think one we touched on the looping on the redevelopment on, what is it, 1053, whatever, Main. The other is the redevelopment of the paparazzi lot. There's a lot of kind of things around stormwater things. Yeah. So that will come the way of public works. It's still early, but this is a larger project. On MBTA overlay, I was part of a small working group. I think the town is doing a major effort to just outreach to everyone and to get a lot of input. The question will be is, from what I hear, is it just a overlay where you change the units per acre and the affordable housing requirement, or will there be more changes to the zoning? Definitely we have to look out for that. If there are any consequences, if there's more changes on height restrictions and other things that they will put into that overlay part. So far, it's a lot of information gathering from the town on the MBTA overlay.
And Linda Miller, the chair of the planning board, has offered to come here and talk to us about that. I mean, there's not a big chance for Public Works to have a lot of input as a group necessarily into that decision, but if enough individuals would like to hear from them, she would come, or someone else could come if we're ever interested. But they are doing so much community outreach. There's a lot of opportunity to go to their meetings.
Most of these are gonna be, video, right? So they're available online, is that right? Or,
I think they are, but
Yeah.
there's a lot that you can go to in person
Yeah,
at the various
yeah.
I think
libraries.
even today is some.
Yeah, I think yeah.
Mhm.
Did anyone else have anything?
We invite the public to.
Oh, yeah, does the public have any comments?
You're
Yes, I do. I'm looking for my hand raised.
Terry, are you trying to speak up?
She's
Yeah.
looking for.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, you're on, we can hear you. Terry Acker, oh, there you go, okay.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Very good meeting, and I didn't get my director's report that I usually get as select board liaison, and I missed it. I really do read it, so I'd like to get back on the distribution list because it is a great report. I really like the discussion about the stormwater utility, and I'm wondering if some of you will be coming to the select board in the next few months to discuss it. Or whether you're just gonna wait for the public hearings or if you have a plan yet.
Okay, so firstly, apologize, you didn't get the director's report, that's an oversight, you should be getting it, we'll make sure you do. As far as the communication outreach, duly noted, Steve Dukran, that, select board would be interested. Terry, we're still kind of working through the early phases of sort of this outreach, but I think, putting the select board on the agenda is certainly, appropriate, so we'll make that a priority.
Right, and I don't speak for the board, I'm just hearing this for the
Understood.
first time. But hopefully, I would be very interested and hopefully others would. When you talk about the possible tiers that are being studied, if one person has a paved driveway that's 100 feet long and another person has crushed stone and it's only 10 feet long, are there possibly going to be like different tiers of fees for that type of thing?
Steve, do you want to answer? I'd imagine we're
Yeah.
talking impervious cover, so that's a factor. And then when it comes to the residential units, I think it's a question of how refined do we get with the analysis? Sometimes there's a certain allowance, and the intent is to try and not make it so unique parcel by parcel. But if there are thresholds, I imagine that would sort of, stand out. But Steve, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Details like that will leave up to the consultant to help determine.
But be prepared for those sorts of questions because everybody looks at their own property with a very specific interest. And,
That's right.
Right.
Plus, you don't want to make it too complicated because it becomes a kind of a billing nightmare.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right. But I know there's people in my neighborhood that have specifically put down a real green type of substance in their driveway. I can't remember what it's called. So there's just going to be all kinds of questions like that.
Yeah, one thing about that, most of these systems, they include a credit. The possibility of giving credits to people who've invested in infrastructure like that.
Great. Okay, and then I have a few engineering questions. Anyway, I was at the transportation meeting last night, and I guess there's going to be some effort to coordinate between the transportation committee and the traffic management group. So that will be very good to try to get communication going. And Steve, you will be integral in that. And I'm hoping, Steve, that you will be there on October 3rd when the transportation committee is meeting with Stan Tech, because they don't know you're the point person yet. So it would be good if you come and introduce yourself.
Yes, yeah, so we're aware of that schedule. We've been participating in some of the preliminary meetings with the consultant, Stan Tech and planning, and also working with the town manager's office on that, Terry. So,
Great.
yes,
And will somebody from the TAC be in the steering committee?
yes. Well, the TAC is one of the committees that will have representation in the steering committee, correct?
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, and my final question is, the traffic management group came to the select board a few months ago with 3 projects. And I'm just wondering what the timeline is. There's one on 7-Star Lane. And some signage is supposed to go up, and school buses and CMLP trucks are going the wrong way on it. But maybe the project isn't finished yet. So just a little concerned about that. I want to know what the time frame is.
Steve or Aaron, do you guys have any thoughts on 7-Star Lane, sort of outstanding items on signage? Are we aware of? I think that was the question, right, Terry?
Right, because it's a one-way, but the school buses are going the wrong way, and the CMLP trucks are going the wrong way, and the package delivery trucks are going the wrong way, and so I'm just wondering when the project will be done and the signs put up.
Terry, I live in the neighborhood too. I'm not sure it's a one-way street. It's just you cannot come out.
Right.
You can't exit one way.
Dead end. You could drive both ways on that
Yeah.
street,
Yeah.
but they made it
Can't get out on
you
Sudbury
can't
Road.
egress onto Sudbury Road.
Right, that's what I mean. They're coming out on Sudbury Road.
That's dangerous. They
I
shouldn't.
know, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Can work on installing some additional signage, so it's clear for any motor vehicle operators, and we can address it.
Yeah, so apparently that's, we're hearing the concern. We will regroup. I don't know if it's TMG, Steve, or, we don't want to get too far over our skis on a commitment, but.
Let me fill in the gaps here.
Yeah.
So what Ms. Ackerman is talking about, we went to the select board based on recommendations from the TMG to make changes by adding some signs over on 7-Star Lane to prohibit the vehicles that make that illegal exit there. And so that's been passed. It's now in the books. We are working to making sure that the legislation is now recorded in the books. They can be enforced by police. And at the same time, we're passing on the recommendations to the Highway and Grounds
Okay.
Division to install the signs.
Got it. So it's a work in progress.
work
It
in
hasn't been dropped. Yes. Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think there's a member
Yeah.
from the
Uh,
public, Jeff
Jeff
Collins.
Collins, are you?
I'm here. Yes,
Yep,
thank you all.
excellent.
And thanks to the staff for the impressive amount of work that was presented there, and the commission, all for your volunteer time. So I live at 55 Highland Street. I was on the West Concord Advisory Committee to 2013, 2019, something like that. And remain very interested in the progress of the Commonwealth Ave project. Great to see the progress that's carried out this year. Just a teeny bit of history. The making crosswalk improvements was an obligation of the Brookside Village development going way back. That obligation was kind of transferred to the town with a cash contribution, and it's been great that the Public Works has taken over that project. Just very interested to see that project brought to completion, as I know a lot of folks over here are. As we see the Main and Walden Street kind of crossing improvement plan pulled together, that'll also be a fantastic improvement. I do hope, while I know the staff can walk and chew gum at the same time, that we retain focus on the Commonwealth Ave improvements and make sure that project gets done before sort of bringing focus to the Main and Walden project. And I hope the commission can sort of keep a close focus on that and make sure that that's staying on schedule and wrapped up in a timely fashion.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
That everyone who had their
I
hand
don't see any
raised?
other hands up.
You.
Anyone else? Okay. All
I
right,
move we adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.